First, it's heady times in the woolshed. A bumper season with grass up to your knees, strong mutton prices and a surging wool price. It's been more than 2 decades since all those factors came together, briefly as it turned out, just before wool prices crashed. Now at last, those who have stuck with wool through some very hard times are being rewarded handsomely.
The buzz is back in Australia's long-beleaguered wool industry.
It's been really good. Yeah, everyone's sort of talking up sheep instead of downgrading them, really, with sheep, and in conjunction with the mutton prices and lamb prices as well, people are smiling.
After 2 decades in the doldrums, wool prices have rocketed upwards in recent weeks.
What we've found at the moment, Tim, that the Eastern Market Indicator commenced the selling season at 898 cents and completed so far at the moment just on 1189 cents. So we've seen an increase of well over 50% since the market opened up in July.
Basically, we're seeing gains in excess of 200 to 300 cents on the mainly at the fine end of the market, Tim.
And no, it's not an aberration or a short-lived delusion. Good prices, say the experts, look like sticking around.
Good to have those good bulky wools, but also nice and fine and soft handling.
When you look at the cost of raw materials that go into other fibres or textiles that compete against wool, they're all running at all-time highs at the moment.
The problem we have often with spikes in the wool market is that a lot of your textile manufacturers start to substitute and move over to alternative fibres, such as cotton and man-made fibres, polyesters, acrylics. At this stage, what we're seeing is all textiles are basically at or near record levels, in particular cotton, which is going to allow the wool market to sustain these gains in the near term.
Wool growers have endured years of very slim margins.
The last serious rise that we had was after the disposal of the stockpile in 2002, 2003, when the graph went up like that, and the EMI peaked, I think, at 11.95, and but we've really got to go back to the 1980s, the late 1980s, when we had a very sustained, very good period where the EMI got up around 1260 odd, I think. Yeah.
So what has happened in the last few weeks? Basically, it's a range of factors, all coming together at once, and very few saw it coming.
It's just been so down for so long that it's hard to sort of see an improvement in the situation. What's really been driving that is pretty much a lack of supply of fine wools. Also, your medium wools have been caught up in this as well and have risen upwards of 150, 200 cents also since the Christmas break.
Crossbred wools have risen between 20 and 30%. That's about 200 cents a kilogram. Wool is back in favour among the world's leading fashion labels. Crucially, there's strong demand from Asia, especially China, where more wool is going into garments.
It's believed that they're taking something like 50 to 60% of the wool that comes into China is being consumed in China, whereas most of it was, of course, being processed and re-exported.
China annually buys about 3/4 of the national wool clip. Increasingly, it's seeking the finer wools, once almost the sole domain of the European textile makers like Italy. The wool market is a barometer of a country's economic health, and Italy is back with a vengeance.
They've set a pace that the Chinese industry has had to match if they wanted to buy the wool. And it's been very, very good for the Australian wool growers.
An exceptionally cold European winter has helped shrug off the effects of the global financial crisis.
We've also seen the enormous cold snaps we've seen in the Northern Hemisphere this year, which has also started to deplete woolen stocks up there that have been on shelves for quite some time, and also recovery in Italy and also in America, where people are back buying clothing, white goods and motor cars. So we're starting to see generally around the world and the likes of India still playing a major stake in buying most of those wool types, and there's certainly increased demand right around.
And all this despite the strength of Australia's surging dollar. Without doubt, the key reason is simply a shortage of wool sheep. The national merino flock is a shade over 72 million, the lowest in more than a century.
A shortage of the good quality wool, the lack of the number of sheep in Australia at the moment, and particularly in this area, the tough times, weather-wise, largely the last X years that we've been through. People have, because there hasn't been the returns in wool, people have gone out of wool and gone into cropping more and more, and been able to do it in a lot of the wetter areas of Victoria because it hasn't been that wet.
Indeed, up till a year ago, most of Australia's eastern seaboard had experienced a decade of well below average rainfall. The change in recent months has been dramatic.
The sheep like short sweet grass, and we've got large amounts of grass out there that's getting a bit long, and which is causing a few problems as well. So it's gone from one extreme to the other of not enough to almost too much. So just trying to manage it so that we can get the best out of it.
At Bannangill Station near Skipton in Western Victoria, shearing of the 25,000-strong merino flock is in full swing. In the 1800s, at the peak of the wool boom, there were once 32 shearers working in the historic woolshed. These sheep have fleeces of around 18.5 microns, exactly the type currently in high demand.
Considering the season we've had with all the wet weather, it's coming up quite well. Yeah, probably actually more wool than we had last year on the sheep.
And nationally, most of the clip won't be as fine this year.
That's entirely due to the season. The wonderful seasonal conditions that we've had has made the fibres fatter, for lack of a better expression. And so we've got an overall pressure on supply, and we've got an even greater pressure on supply at the fine wool end.
Bruce Pettit has been in the industry for 50 years as a wool classer and dipping contractor. He wisely points out that had it not been for the good mutton prices of recent years, Australia's merino flock would be even smaller.
People have stuck with wool recently, over the last couple of years, or stuck with sheep. And of course now it's an advantage because here we are with wool improving. And to me, it's very, very interesting because we are seeing more and more people now having a go at wanting to improve their wool. When wool was still down and mutton was up, they were all wanting to go to mutton sheep. Now they're sort of starting saying, oh, I think we better stick with wool sheep.
A good hauteur of length, which means, the top's going to come out nice at about that 80-90 mil length, which is what...
The Weeding brothers from Oatlands in the renowned fine wool country of central Tasmania are a case in point. They run a flock of around 19 microns, and like many in recent times, they moved away from wool into more prime lamb production.
We're probably, $3 for the stronger stuff and $4 to $5 better off than last year, which is, quite significant when you put that over a whole flock. So it certainly helps the bottom line.
And may it continue.
I hope so.
11, 12, 20.
Means well, yeah, huge amount. A lot to the end dollar, and gives us a fair bit of faith to be back, in the wool industry. So yeah, just for a while, a lot of people are scratching their heads, sort of thing. So yeah, but no, it's a good time. It's good times.
This year, the brothers are planning to breed more wool-producing sheep. John and Heather McIntyre's wool topped the prices at this Melbourne sale, 1960 cents a kilogram for wool shorn from 2-year-old mixed-sex sheep. It was just reward for the couple who never lost their faith in wool.
We were terribly pleased today. It's made above valuations and the best prices for some 23 to 25 years. And that's a great thing for the wool grower, particularly the superfine wool grower, because we haven't really been getting the value for the work we put into the breeding and the nurturing of our sheep. And we live in country that's been a bit dry in the Western District, and so this is a fantastic day today for us.
Certainly there has been some dramatic drops in superfine wool after the peaks there in 1988-89. But when you look at the overall commodity picture in the world, it would be expected, I think, that these sort of prices will remain, particularly in the light of the fact that there isn't a lot of this wool being grown anymore, even in not only in Australia but in other parts of the world as well.
Those producers who have stuck at wool have seen some substantially sound returns for surplus livestock sales or sheep sales in the last 12 months. And of course now with this increase in wool price, a lot of those medium type and strong wool clips out of the pastoral zones are now increasing by sort of $300 to $400 a bale. So that's now seeing some good returns for those producers also.
But don't expect merino numbers to increase rapidly so that farmers can cash in on the rise in wool prices.
I think the meat industry will keep them pretty well in check, the numbers, so that's obviously going to keep wool, wool levels down because there's less sheep, and hopefully that'll increase competition for what wool there is.
Our neighbours are going into cattle and fat lambs and cropping. Cropping's becoming a big thing in the district now, and the sheep numbers have reduced considerably, and those that still have sheep are joining many of their ewes to a prime lamb sire and breeding prime lamb mothers. So, but we've stuck to this one issue and this one product, and we're very, very pleased and quite proud today of our product.
Years of slim margins have winnowed out the less committed and less fastidious wool growers.
It's not just we're running sheep anymore, we're producing an article and getting that consistency in that. And most wool producers are aiming towards that now, is they're almost specialising in the type of wool they're producing.
Most wool growers have a simple wish: profitable and sustainable prices. But no one in the industry is getting too smug.
I don't think there's anyone who follows the industry who doesn't worry too much about the market going up like that, because we've got plenty of history of it coming back at the same rate.
And there's always something to bring wool growers back to earth. After years of dusty conditions, this season's wool clip will show the effects of the exceptional wet year. Lots of grass seeds in the wool and some discoloured fleeces.
We do grow some wool that's shorn in the autumn, and I'm shuddering to think what that's going to be like as far as vegetable matter and colour and some of those other attributes are concerned.
One of the other great problems this hot and humid summer has been fly strike, and as you can see, it's done some enormous damage throughout the sheep districts of Australia.
In some districts, sheep deaths from fly strike are estimated to be as high as 15%.
Particularly since the heavy rain in January that we had here. There's been quite a few coming around, and the district is